What's going on, everyone? In this video, we'll be going over 20 setups that I see potential in for this upcoming week. First, we'll touch on SPY and QQQ just to go over the overall markets. Then we'll touch on Oracle and Adobe, seeing as those are the really the only two notable earnings for this upcoming week, as well as, we have 16 setups that I see potential in. With that being said, we'll just dive right into SPY. So as you can see, we do have this uptrending support line. We have been going over this ascending triangle for quite a while. We did just kind of break above that 422.5 area and push for new all-time highs this past week. I would like to see if we can actually hold this 422.5 area as a support now and possibly push to 425, maybe even 430 within the upcoming week or upcoming couple weeks or whatnot. We did make a new all-time high on the intraday time frames of 424.63, so I would like to see if we could actually test 425, see the price action around there, and possibly push further after that to maybe 427.5 to 430 or so. But we do also have, as I mentioned, that 422.5 area. I would like to see if that does hold, or if we come back down and test some of these volume shelves, and then we do have a nice support around 418, as well as a support area around 410, which we haven't tested for a couple weeks or so. We do have the 20 SMA currently around 419 almost, and the 50 SMA around that 415 to 416 area. All right, so QQQ does have a nice uptrending support line where we do have a few nice bounces off of. We are currently almost testing all-time highs. We did close yesterday, which was Friday, at 341.24. We do have an all-time high of 342.80. I would like to see if we could actually break that resistance area and possibly push to maybe 345 or 350 if we do get a nice break of this ascending triangle that we also have on QQQ. So QQQ and SPY all are creating the same patterns here. However, QQQ just has been lagging a little bit. But we have seen a nice show of strength the past couple weeks after bouncing off of the 20 and 50 SMA. We have seen a nice push after those, bouncing off of those SMAs. But I would like to see how this upcoming week shapes up and if we can actually break that resistance area and possibly push to maybe 345 to 350 or so, or if we actually reject that area and come back down to test around 338 or 334. We do have the 50 SMA at 333.38 and the 20 SMA around 332 or so. So I would be watching those areas if we do actually get a nice strong rejection and retest some of these support areas. All right, so with that being said, we will go over Oracle, and as I mentioned, they do report Tuesday and after hours. I would like to see how this one shapes up. We do have a nice uptrending support line with several bounces off of this. We did just recently break out of an ascending triangle and we pushed into around this 85 area. Then we did actually pull back. So I would like to see if we retest this uptrending support line as well as this 20 SMA around 80.50 or so. If we do test those levels, I'd like to see if we could actually bounce. We are above some volume shelves, so if we do come back down, we do have some strong supports. So I would like to see how those hold up, and if we can actually get a nice bounce off of that and possibly retest the recent 52-week highs. But if we do break down, then I do have some levels around 78.50, which the 50 SMA is also around that level as well. But then afterwards, if we continue downwards, I have a level around 76.70 and 74.25. Realistically, I just want to see how this upcoming earnings report does affect the stock, and if we can actually see a strong reaction from that earnings report either to the upside or the downside. All right, so Adobe does report in Thursday and after hours. We have had this range that we have been trading in really since July 13th of last year, and we did just peak out from new all-time highs on Adobe this past Friday. So we have been range trading for honestly almost a year here, so we could possibly see a nice strong move to the upside, seeing as all of this price action could result in a bottle up effect. With that being said, I do also have some other areas that I do just want to mark in real quick, right there and right there. But with that being said, we did see somewhat of an ascending triangle here with this uptrending support, and then we did test these horizontal resistances and we pushed out. But I would like to see realistically how this one reacts to earnings. We could see a nice pop. I want to see, price target upgrades or downgrades, how that affects the stock, and realistically just the reaction that we get from earnings reports. But This one could possibly see a nice move, as I mentioned, seeing as we have, pretty much traded between a large range for the past year or so. So if we do actually see a good reaction from earnings, some nice price target raises, initiations, upgrades, and whatnot, then we could really see a nice strong move. The first level I'm going to be watching is going to be 550 because that is a key psychological whole number. And after that, I'm going to be watching the price action and just decipher how strong or weak this one is. If we do, see some continuation to the upside. But if we do come back down, I want to see first off if we can hold these levels that were previous all-time highs. I want to see if we could hold those as support. We have 536 and we have 525.50. So I would like to see if we come back down to retest those. If we can hold those levels, that'd be a nice showcase of strength, and possibly we could see a pivot point, a reversal off of those levels, and then maybe continue on for new all-time highs. But I would be watching those levels first. But if we continue downwards, then I would be watching around 514 or so. And then I also have some strong levels around 506.50 and 587.50. And we do have this uptrending support line as well as our 20 and 50 SMA around 501. So I would be watching those levels to the downside if we do get a nice move to the downside. But realistically, I'd be waiting to see how the earnings report affects the price action in this stock. All right, so TIGR has been very strong. We did have a shares offering that did affect the price action a little bit, and that's why we have had some choppiness between really 24.70 to 25 all the way up to around 28.50. We did push in after hours on Friday, and we actually broke this high of 28.90. I don't know if we closed above that. I'm not quite sure. I don't really remember. But we do have a gap to the upside between 29.48 and 30.30. So I would be watching this upcoming week to see if we could actually push and fill that. This one has been very strong. And as I mentioned with that shares offering, I actually really liked the showcasing of strength after that shares offering. So we came back down and tested that breakout point around 24.58, and then we did see a nice bounce off of that and push. And then obviously on Thursday we did see a nice red day, but Friday was a very strong day. So I would like to see how this one acts this upcoming week. This one has been very strong, and we have gone over this one the past week, and maybe even the week before that as well. But we are up, let's see here, over 55% in the past 2.5 weeks or so, or 2 weeks, I think. Yeah, 2 weeks. So I would like to see, if this upcoming week could possibly result in a gap fill to the upside and maybe retest this 31 area. We don't really have much volume up here. So if we do continue upwards, we could see that the volume starts to dry up in terms of the supply, and if demand stays the same, we could see a nice move to the upside. But as you can see right here, we do have somewhat of an inverse head and shoulders that I haven't really gone over. We have this left shoulder, the head right here, and this right shoulder. So we could see a nice continuation play. We have already seen a continuation of that pattern right there and a completion of that pattern. But I would like to see what happens this upcoming week, as well as maybe the week after that. We could possibly even push to some of these all-time high levels that I'd be watching for. But if we do actually reject these levels, I'd be looking for a strong rejection of 28.50, and then possibly see if we could actually come all the way back down to 24.58. At that point in time, we would be in a range between 24.58 and 28.50. I would like to see if we could actually break down further and retest some of these levels down here if we do get a strong rejection. However, personally, I'm watching the upside more than I am the downside, just because of the recent showcasing of strength even after that shares offering. All right, so with AMC, I actually want to dive into the 2-hour time frame. We do have somewhat of a descending triangle here. We are testing that downtrending resistance. We have 1, 2, 3, I guess you could take 4 rejections of that resistance. I would like to see what happens the upcoming weeks, or this upcoming week, to see where we end up. So we do have, as I mentioned, this downtrending resistance as well as the 20 SMA on the 2-hour time frame that is currently around 50.40 or so. I would like to see if we could get a strong break of this and break 42 or 52.40, and then after that, I'd like to see if we could push to around 57.78 or so. If we get above those levels, it appears that the volume dries up, so the supply could potentially start to dry up, and we could see that, you know, we get an acceleration to the upside if we actually get above these shelves as well as these horizontal resistances. But I would be watching these levels as well as around 60 to 61 or so. After that, then the next real level I'm going to be watching is going to be around 65, 60 or so. But this one does have the potential to see a nice strong short squeeze. I do believe that the short float on this one is still fairly high. I did see some, you know, news or stats released that Citadel, it was either Citadel or Melvin Capital, I know they're linked together to some degree. They have either 6 billion or 8 billion in losses since the start of May. So I'm assuming that, you know, there's a possibility that you know, they are still holding large short positions in these names. So we could see a nice strong short squeeze if we do break this descending triangle and actually break some of these horizontal resistances and see a nice strong move to the upside. I would be watching volume and overall price action on this one. This one is a volatile name, so just be a little careful with this one, especially if you're trading options, due to the fact that the implied volatility is going to likely be heightened. You know, I don't really trade options that much anymore, but if you are trading options, I would be you know, cognizant of that. But overall, this one is providing a very, very solid setup, and I will definitely be watching this one for the upcoming week. But if we do reject these levels, then I would be watching to see if we come back down to test 43 and if we can hold that. If we can't, then I'd be watching this 50 SMA, which is currently around 42. And then we do have a level around 3770 or so. Alrighty, so NVIDIA has been very, very strong the past month or so. We have seen a very strong acceleration to the upside after breaking this downtrending channel. You know, obviously after breaking all-time highs, we have seen a nice continuation play to the upside as well. And we did just push for new all-time highs on Friday after kind of consolidating and seeing a micro descending triangle. And then we saw a nice breakout to the upside. I do want to just kind of put in a level right here real quick. But around 703 could possibly be a support level. We did have some rejections around there, so I would like to see you know, how price action acts this upcoming week on NVIDIA. If we do actually break that 717.57 high and possibly push to 720, maybe even 725 or so and thereon. But if we come back down to retest this breakout point on the micro, then I'd be looking to see how 703 holds up. If we break through that, then I'd be watching to see if we can come back down and test around 684.50. If we give up that level, then I'd really be looking to see if we come back down and test this initial breakout point around 648.42, where we had that all-time high push. So, you know, with a lot of breakouts, we do see retesting of that breakout point, and then you know, we see a nice bounce and acceleration to the upside once more. But I would like to see just overall how this one acts within the upcoming week, and really just the rest of the month. This one has been very strong, so I would just see, you know, if we do see a further consolidation. You know, we had consolidation for about 4 days or so. But I would like to see realistically just what happens with this one. It has been very strong, and at this point, you know, we could possibly see a consolidation or a reversal and possibly retesting of some of these breakout points. So here we have AMAT, also known as Applied Materials. This one is also a semiconductor stock. We have somewhat of a cup and handle right here. We did break out of a pinch point on the macro. I would like to see how this you know, cup and handle does play out. We do have, you know, obviously this cup right here, and then this handle right here. I do like the fact that it is a falling handle. I feel like I've mentioned this before, possibly not, but with cup and handles, typically I like to see somewhat of a falling in the handle, because then we do have, you know, bears trying to step in. They're trying to bring price down, or, you know, maybe it's just selling pressure or whatnot from people taking profits. But then after breaking that downtrending resistance within that handle, we do have, you know, if it showcases good strength, we do have, you know, the fact is shown that, you know, bulls are actually in control. Whereas if it's just a consolidation between a range, you know, no one's necessarily in control. Maybe those bears didn't try to step in as hard as they possibly could have. Therefore, you know, when we do break out of that to the upside, maybe that's when the bears want to try to step in for a bull trap. But we do have a little bit of a fall to this handle. Obviously, this isn't necessarily the best cup and handle right here. And realistically, you could also see somewhat of a inverse head and shoulders, with the left shoulder being right here, the head, and then the right shoulder being right here. But I'd really just like to see if we can actually get a strong break of this 142.30 area and then push that all-time high of 146. If we can break those levels, then I'm going to be looking for around 150 is going to be my first price target. But if we reject these levels, then I'm going to be watching to see if we can actually first off come back down and retest 132.62. We do have these 20 and 50 SMAs around 133.70, so I would like to see if we can actually get a nice strong bounce off of that in a reversal for some uptrending price action. But if we continue downwards, then I'd be watching around 128.50, and then I do have levels around 124.65 as well as 121.57. So I would be watching those levels as well, and we are trading around some nice strong volume shelves, so I would like to see overall how price action acts, and we are currently just below the POC, which stands for point of control. That just showcases where the most volume is within the given time frame. So obviously we are on the daily time frame. First off, I'd really like to see a nice strong regaining of the 138 level for to get above that POC level, that point of control level. After that, we would be above, pretty much the strongest volume shelves, and if we can hold those levels, then we could really see a nice move to the upside. But if we do see, that we reject these levels and continue rejecting, then I'd be looking to see if we see a nice strong move to the downside. All right, so Amazon has seen some very good price action this past week. We bounced off of the POC on the daily time frame here, and let's just see, how much we have moved within this past week. We moved around 6% or so, which for most stocks necessarily isn't too good, but for Amazon being a mega cap stock, that is a very strong move. And if you're in an options trader, let's say you're day trading, swing trading, or whatnot, you catch some of that move, that is a very nice payout right there. But we did regain the 20 and 50 SMAs. We did close above this 334 or 3,341 level. I would like to see if we actually continue to push. We are starting to get above some of these volume shelves, so I would like to see what happens here. We did see a nice bounce off that POC, as I mentioned. Once we get above 344 or 3,445 or so, if we can get above those levels, then we really don't have too much volume to the upside, and I'd really like to see if we could possibly retest all-time highs. We have been trading in this range since July 2nd. So, we could see a bottle up effect, and if we actually do break out for new all-time highs, we could see a nice push to the upside. The first level I'd be price targeting is going to be around 3,600, then 3,650 or so. But if we do reject these levels, I'd like to see if we come back down and retest this 50 SMA around 3,290. If we continue downwards, then we have the 20 SMA around 3,250 or 3,240, as well as this uptrending support line that we did bounce off of recently. I would just like to see how this upcoming week acts, and if we can actually get a nice continuation play to the upside, or if we reject and continue downwards. All right, so Microsoft did have this downtrending channel that we broke out of a couple weeks ago. We started pushing, then we rejected. We got above the 20 and 50 SMAs recently, and then we started pushing. We got above this 255.40 horizontal resistance level. After that, we did start to close some of this gap. So I would like to see if this upcoming week we can actually close the remainder of this gap. Originally, the gap was between 260.12 to 256.54. We closed yesterday on Friday at 257.89, and we had a high of day of 258.49. So I would like to see if we can actually break or close that gap and then break this 261.22 resistance area and then push all-time highs, which we have around 263.19. If we can break those levels, then I'd be watching for 265, maybe even 270. This one is looking very interesting after breaking out of this downtrending channel, and it does appear that Microsoft and Amazon are actually showcasing some good strength as of lately. So I would like to see if those mega caps can actually start pushing. If that does happen, the overall market could see a nice move, and especially seeing as we are at all-time highs now, I would really like to see if we could possibly push to that 425 to 430 area on SPY and break those all-time highs on QQQ and possibly push to 345 or so. But overall, with the market movers showcasing some recent strength, I would like to see, you know, how this one plays out. But if we do reject these areas, then I'd be looking to see if we could get a strong break of 255.40 and actually come back down to this 50 SMA, which is around 251.40, and then we also have that 20 SMA around 249.29 or so. But I also do have another level that I just haven't put in around that 251 area, so I would like to see if we do retest that level. After that, I have levels around 246.50, and we do have a gap down there as well between let's see, 246.34 to 247.51 that I'd be watching for as well. So Snap has been very strong as of lately. We have seen a breakout of this downtrending resistance. We did retest that breakout, and we did push this past week, getting above that POC and testing this resistance around 65.40. If we do get above that level, I would be watching briefly around 66 or so just to get above that level. And then after that, you know, we really don't have too much volume being held up here, so the supply could possibly start to dry up, and we could possibly see a really strong move to the upside. I'd be watching around 69 first, seeing as these rejections and closes and whatnot. But we do have the potential for an inverse H, which is one of my favorite patterns, not only on you know, the micro, seeing as I'm really a major scalper, but I also do swing trades, so I would like to see if this could actually follow out and if we do get a nice strong inverse H pattern continuation play to the upside. But I would be watching around that 67 to 69 area. If we do actually break this 65.40 level, I would like to see how volume is acting and just overall price action. But you know, as I mentioned, QQQ is near those all-time highs, so we could start to see some more strength from the tech stocks. Obviously, Snap is within that category, so I would like to see how price acts this upcoming week, not only on Snap but also QQQ, seeing as that is the tech market. But if we do reject these levels, I would be watching to see, you know, if we come back down, if we can actually hold this POC where we do have the most volume being held in that volume shelf. If we give up that level, then I'd be watching 61.34, and then we do have, these 20 and 50 SMAs around 59 or so, between 58.60 to 59.30. So I would be watching those levels as well. All right, so PayPal is shaping up very well right here. If we go to the weekly, actually, these lines are kind of intersecting with my weekly lines. For some reason, you know, if you draw on the weekly, it also goes down to the daily. But right here, the weekly is looking very, very good. I want to see how this upcoming week actually shapes up. We did see a nice breakout of this pinch point. We did have a bounce off this 20 SMA on the weekly time frame, and then we got above this 269.37 level, which was a rejection level. I'd like to see if we could actually test 278. If we can break that level, then we could actually see a nice push to the upside. This one has been a lot stronger than Square. Honestly, for a while, Square was, personally the one that I like to trade over PayPal. And I actually had, some positions in that, not only for day trading, but, swing trading and whatnot. But with that being said, it appears that PayPal is actually starting to dominate more than Square is. But if we go back down to the daily time frame just to look at the volume shelves, we get to see that after this 278 level, we could see that the supply starts to dry up. We don't really have much volume up here. We traded in these levels only for this time frame of maybe 8 to 10 days or so. So after that, we could really see a nice strong move to the upside after breaking out of this pinch point, and we could to some degree see this inverse head and shoulders as well. This left shoulder, this head, and then we have this right shoulder right here that we currently are trying to break out of. So if we do break that 278 level, we could see a nice strong move to the upside. I am definitely going to be watching this one for these upcoming weeks, but if we do reject these levels, I'd be looking to see if we come back down to around 260 to 261, where we do have a strong level. And then we do have the 20 and 50 SMA that are around 257 to 259 or so. All right, so Tesla is pretty much a fan favorite for a lot of traders. We are currently in a pinch point. We do have this downtrending resistance right here on the micro, as well as this uptrending support on the micro. We do have this small gap between 566.21 to around 571.07. I would be watching to see if we do break down out of this pinch point and possibly fill that gap. If that does happen, then I would be watching to see if we could break 542. If we break 542, we could see a nice strong flush to around 500. Tesla honestly has been rather weak as of, realistically since making those all-time highs. We saw a nice strong flush. Granted the market flushed the same time, but this one just hasn't seen the same kind of strength that a lot of other tech stocks and other things have seen. Don't get me wrong, the EV market as a whole has been weak, but we are seeing some really nice strength from Ford, which is stepping into the EV market and trying to have a bigger presence there. They have had a lot of pre-orders for their electric F-150. NIO is starting to gain more market share in China, where obviously they are located. And same with XPEV and Li. Just really appears as if the overall driving force for a lot of investors and traders here is just kind of leaving and going to some of these other names and gravitating towards those names, because Tesla's just been weak as of lately. Obviously for options traders, this is still a very good name, and even shares traders, but for the most part, it just appears that a lot of people are going back to those other names. As I mentioned, NIO, they have seen a lot of strength lately within the EV market, and we will actually go over that one here shortly. But that one did just see a nice strong closing of the week this past week, with news release that they will be selling some cars in Europe. So this one, Tesla, I'm not sure how I feel about this one right now. I'd really like to see how this pinch point plays out. If we could actually break this pinch point, first off, I'd be looking to see if we could get a strong break of 630 to actually push to maybe around 654 and see if we can actually start to see some strength. But we do have that 50 SMA around that 654 level. So if we do break out to the upside, I would be watching to see how price acts around there, because we do have good potential for possible rejection. But if we do reject this downtrending resistance within this pinch point, I'd be looking to see if we could give up this 598 level, which has been holding quite well, as well as that 20 SMA being around there. If we give up those levels and break this uptrending support line, then I'd really like to see if we could actually close this gap down to 566.74 that I just mentioned. If we break that level, then I'd be looking to see if we retest 542, and if we break 542, we'd be holding a lot of volume to the overhead, so we could see a lot of supply start to flush into the market. Therefore, if demand stays the same or decreases, we could see a strong flush, possibly to 500 or even 462. But overall, as I mentioned, I really just want to see how this one shapes up. I haven't really been trading this name too much. As I mentioned, I'm not an options trader, so that could be a great reason as to why. But realistically, this one hasn't had the same kind of attraction that it had in 2020. And realistically, we do have somewhat of a bull flag, or not bull flag, a bear flag right here going on. So if we do break this uptrending support line, we could see a nice strong flush to the downside, and at that point, I would possibly be playing some puts on a swing play personally, especially if we break this 542 level. Alrighty, so Cloudflare, also known as NET, has been performing very well as of lately. This one and CrowdStrike, which they are within the same industry, they have been performing very well. So I would like to see how this one shapes up this upcoming week. If we could actually break this 94.72 level and then push all-time highs, which are currently around 95.77. But this one is looking very interesting. We have seen a nice showcasing of strength this past week. We bounced off that POC and saw a nice push to the upside, which, let's just see how much this past week saw. We were up around 15% almost this past week. So I would really like to see if that strength kind of continues on to this upcoming week, and if we can break that 94.72 level and then push that 95.77 all-time high. If that does break, I'd be looking to see if we could push around 97.50, maybe 100. But if we do reject these levels, I'd be looking to see if we come back down to around 91. If we break that level, then we do have a strong level around 86.11, which we could possibly retest that breakout point. and we do have a lot of volume shelves around those areas as well. So as I just mentioned, Crowd is also a very strong name. This one is in the same industry as Net or Cloudflare, or Cloudflare, I should say. They are both, I believe, software security software or something along those lines. We did have a pinch point. We broke out, retested that breakout point, and realistically the 20 and 50 SMA, we saw a strong bounce off of those levels, and we continued on. I would really like to see if we can get above the closing from yesterday of 231.27. If we can continue on and see a nice showcase of strength and then break 236.84, then I'd really be watching to see if we could break 242.50 and then possibly test the all-time high, which is currently around 251.28. But if we do reject these levels, I would be watching to see if we can actually retest the 20 SMA, which is currently around 213. We do have some levels between there of 225 or 225.50, 218.50, and then we do have that POC, which is also around that 210.80 to 211 level as well. All right, so SE, also known as C Limited, has been very strong. We did see a nice push after breaking around this 262.50 level. We did have some nice price action this past week, and we did break this pinch point. I would like to see if we could actually get above this 278.03 resistance area. We did have a high of day on Friday of 278.52, so I would like to see if we could break that and then possibly push to all-time highs, which are currently 285. This one does look like we could see a nice move. And we have seen a very strong bounce after some weakness within the overall market. We have bounced, let's see here, around 35% within the past 3.5 weeks or so. I would like to see if that strength does continue on and if we can break that 285 level and then possibly push to around 300. If I remember correctly, I have seen some price target upgrades on this one recently. I believe 340 was the price target upgrade. I'm not quite sure which institution actually upgraded that, but this one has been very strong as of lately, so I would like to see if that continues on. But if it doesn't, I would like to see if we get a strong rejection of 278, retest 267.70, then that 257 level. And then we also have that POC around 251 or so, as well as the 20 SMA there. And the 50 SMA around 246.60 or so. All right, so with FUBO, we did have this long-term downtrending resistance, which we broke out of. We did push to VWAP on the daily time frame, which is around 31.50 or so. We rejected those levels, and now we currently are kind of in a bull flag on the micro after making this strong move up. So here, let me just put that in real quick. We do have that downtrending resistance, as well as this support right here. We have had a very, very strong move up after bottoming, so we have this move up of around 115% in around 3 to 4 weeks or so. This one is a heavily shorted name, and we could see that if we get above this recent high, that if we get above VWAP, those recent highs and these volume shelves, we could see a nice short squeeze and push to the upside, maybe 33.70 or so. If we get above 33.70, I'd be watching around 39 to 40 or so, where we do have a strong level. But once this one starts to move, it can really, really move. Obviously, over here we have a complete melt up and a climax point, but I'd really like to see how this one shapes up this upcoming week, and if we can actually possibly break the recent highs and continue on to around 33.70 or so. If we do reject these levels, then I'd be watching to see if we come back down to around 27.34. Then we do have supports around 26 and 23.71, as well as the 20 SMA around 24.73 or so. All right, so Moderna has been very strong. We do have a lot of strong price action as of lately after breaking for new all-time highs on the intraday time frame, and we have somewhat of a pinch point here within the past 5 days or so, and we are kind of testing that 219.74 resistance area. If we do get above that level, then I'd be watching to see if we could actually push to around 227, where we have that all-time high. If we can break that, then I'd be watching around 230 to 235 or so. But if we continue rejecting and actually break down to the downside, I'd be watching to see if we can give up 207 with strength and possibly retest this initial breakout point of 189 or so. And then we do have that 20 SMA around this support level around 186. as well as levels around 180 or so. But this one has been very strong. We have had some good catalysts on this one, and the reaction from those catalysts have been good. So I would be looking to see if we do get a continuation this upcoming week, and if that strength actually continues on. All right, so Palantir is a heavily traded name by beginner traders and just regular traders. This one is a this one is a name that I love to trade myself, actually, but this one has been in a downtrending channel for a while. We have recently broken out, so I've been trading it recently, but as it was in this downtrending channel, I haven't really traded it much, and I kind of actually gave up this name. But if we do get above this 2490 level and this recent high of 2523, then I really actually might start to take some swing positions on this one if we do have some good showcasing of strength, because this one can actually move very, very well once it does have the right setup and whatnot. But we are within some nice volume channels and volume shelves and whatnot, so we are kind of digesting that volume and kind of trying to absorb that. If we can absorb that and see a nice move to the upside, then this one could really, really pop, especially if we get above some of these resistances. First, I'd be watching around obviously that 25 area, seeing as we are just below that and that 25-23 high as of recently. But if we get above 26.34 and 28.15, then we could possibly see a very nice move to the upside. I would be watching to see if we could test around 30, maybe even 31.20 or so. But this one, it does appear like we could possibly actually start to see a nice reversal on the macro in this one, seeing as we have broken out of this downtrending channel. I would like to see really how this one shapes up this upcoming week and for the remainder of this month. But if we do reject this 2490 level, I'd be watching to see if this POC holds, where we do have the majority of volume being held. If we do not hold that level, then I'd be watching around 23. We do have the 20 and 50 SMA currently around 22.36 or so, and then we also have a strong level around 21 as well. All right, and lastly we have NEO. So we do have this gap to the upside between 47.13 and around 47.63, so I would like to see if we could actually fill that gap to the upside. This one has seen some good strength. When you compare it to the overall EV market, this one as well as XPEV. I haven't really been keeping in touch with Lee, but NEO and XPEV have been performing well. With the fact that they just had that news from the European League that they're going to be able to sell some EVs there. That has been that saw very strong price action after that was released. And as I mentioned, it does appear that NEO is taking up more of that market share in China and kind of taking it away from Tesla. So I would like to see if a lot of people start to rotate back to NEO, and if this one can actually get a good following once more. We do have somewhat of a double bottom on the macro. I would like to see how that plays out. But I would like to see overall if we can actually just get above yesterday's or Friday's high of day, which was 46.26. Fill that gap to the upside and possibly test 48.85. If we can get above that level, then we could possibly see a nice move to the upside, seeing as we are above the majority of the volume shelves at that point. But if we do reject this level, then I'd be looking to see if we come back down to around 42.50 or even retest that POC, which is currently around 41.50 or so. And then we do have some levels around 39.62, as well as the 20 and 50 SMA around 38 to 38.50 or so. With that being said, lots of opportunities. We are seeing, that tech is performing a lot better. For a while, tech was lagging the overall market, but it does appear that those growth names are actually starting to gain some good traction once more. So overall, just scout for your setups, create game plans around those, and just try to execute with the utmost discipline that you can. With that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend and enjoy the remainder of that, and then capitalize on this upcoming week and the market.